When using VectoBac WDG in WALS applications, you'll need to mix the product into suspension. To do so, you can simply use a drill and paint stir with a 5-gallon bucket for small quantities, or you can build a mixing station similar to this with a 55-gallon drum or larger, water pump, and some simple plumbing. You can also purchase a fully assembled mixing station, including a Venturi inductor, to make mixing simple. Today, I'm going to show you how to create and build your own mixing station. An important piece of your mixing system is the water pump. You want to make sure you get a water pump large enough to push the water in your tank. For this example of 50 gallons or smaller, this 1-inch 79cc gas-powered water pump will do. If you're doing larger tanks over 100 gallons, you may want to consider using a 2-inch Honda GX120 pump. I've made only one small modification to this before adding the plumbing to the full mixing station. The modifications I've made on this water pump include a 90-degree angle outside of the outflow into a 2-way ball valve with male threaded extensions on each end where I will attach the hoses. I will use the ball valve to redirect the flow when I'm ready to empty the mix tank into the equipment spray tank. Next, you're going to want to gather your tank and your plumbing supplies. For this example, I'm going to use a small 35-gallon tank just so you can see inside as I assemble it. But you can use any size of tank. If you do use a refurbished tank, make sure that you clean it properly before using it. Here are some parts and pieces you're going to need to get started. Remember, in today's example, I'm using a 1-inch water pump and 1-inch PVC pipes and hoses. You may want to use a 2-inch if you're using a larger pump and a larger tank. To get started, you're going to need 2 1-inch bulkheads. You'll need 2 90-degree angled PVC threaded on both the inside and out, male to female. You'll need 1 90-degree PVC threaded on the inside, female on both ends. You'll also need a 1-inch threaded male-to-male extension pipe. The length of this will be determined by the size of your tank. You'll need some 1-inch extensions threaded. You'll also need some 1-inch hose clamps. Now, my unit is meant to be portable, so if your unit is going to be stationary, you may not need these, and you can use permanent PVC corners if you'd like. And some hose clamps to attach all of those. You will need 6 of those in total. You'll also need a few tools, such as a jigsaw to cut through the water tank, a flathead screwdriver, some plumber's tape, a large enough wrench to get around your 1-inch bulkhead, a drill with a small bit on it, and a funnel to use for entering the VectoBac WDG into the mixing station. Finally, you'll need a series of hoses. You'll need at least 1 non-collapsible hose that will go on the suction end of your water pump, and then 2 additional hoses, one that will recirculate suspension from the water pump to the mix tank, and the third will go from the water pump to the spray equipment tank when you're ready to fill. The length of these hoses will be determined by your individual setup. Now here's a list of all the items that we've talked about you'll need to get started. Now that we have all of our supplies together, we're going to prepare the spray tank, and we're going to start by cutting the majority of the top off. My tank has 2 holes in the top, and I'm going to save 1 hole so that I can use it for my funnel when adding product to the mix station. And then I'm going to remove this whole large side. So I went ahead and drew a straight line here so I could follow something, and I'm just going to take my drill here and make a few holes in the corner so I can do straight lines with my saw. Now I'm just going to take my jigsaw and cut the top all the way around. Now that I have the top cut off my tank, I'm going to mark the locations for the inflow and outflow. I'm going to use the bulkhead lock nut to measure the distance of the circle. So on my tank, I'm going to use my existing hole for my funnel, which will be used to add product to the mixing station as we're mixing. So I want to ensure that my inflow and outflow are not directly under that. So for this one, my inflow I'm going to put up here towards the top so that as the water flows, the product will drop into the flow of water. And then my outflow I will mark down here on the bottom where it will draw out back through the pump for the recirculation. So to do that, I'm just going to flip this over on its side here. And I'll mark this first one here at the bottom. You do want to ensure that you do it far enough on the bottom of the tank that you have room to screw in the bulkhead lock nut. Sometimes there's a little bit of difference there you can't see, so move it up a little bit. And just take a marker here and mark the circle on the inside so that we know how big to make our circle. And then we'll do the same thing on the opposite side of the tank. Again, towards the top. And the distance of this doesn't matter at this time because we're going to use our extension pole to bring the inflow down a little bit into the water of the tank. Now that we have them marked, we'll just use a drill and drill out the holes. To drill out the holes, I'm going to use a 1.5 inch drill bit and just mark in the center here and carefully. Drill through each hole. And now we'll be able to place our bulkheads in place. Now that we have the top removed and our holes drilled, we can start putting together the internal plumbing. We're going to begin with the bulkheads. So take the bulkhead, you may have to trim the circle up just to get it in there, and make sure that you remove all of the sharp edges before entering it, but go ahead and push in the bulkhead in this direction. Then you're going to take the lock nut and put it on the back side here and just screw it on until it's tight. Then you'll probably need to use your pliers once you get all the way down to make sure that it is secure against the edges of the tank. Sometimes I like to use this to hold it in place while I lock down the lock nut just so that it doesn't spin in place. Alright, that seems to be locked in place. Then we'll just remove this and we'll put in the other bulkhead. Alright, both bulkheads are in place and locked together. Next, we're going to start by doing the rest of the internal plumbing. For the inflow portion of the mixing station, we're going to start by using some plumber's tape and attaching it to all of the threaded sections. I did that on all my pipes prior to starting just to make it easy. You just want to make sure that you have some tight seals and nothing's leaking. So we're going to start with this 90-degree angle with the male threaded, and you're going to screw it into the inside of the bulkhead, which is also threaded. And then you want to tighten it down so that when it's tight, it's facing down. All right, then you're going to take your 1-inch extension pipe and your other 90-degree female to female and take it and go ahead and attach it to one end. Again, go ahead and tighten it down. Then you'll take the whole entire thing and you're going to screw it in to the bottom of the 90-degree that you just attached to the bulkhead. And then when you tighten this, you want this so that the angle of flow is shooting water towards the hole that we left here for our funnel when adding product to the mixing station. Now we need to do the other side, which is the outflow, where it gets sucked out in the bottom bulkhead down there. So now we're going to use our final 90-degree female to male, and we're going to screw the male into this bulkhead. And you want to tighten this down so that it is facing down. Now, if you have any space left over to the from the bottom of the tank, you may want to add a small PVC pipe that reaches down to the bottom, so when you're sucking the product out, you get all of the product into the bottom out. You may have to lean it a little bit. And that is the basics of the internal plumbing for the mixing station. Now we just need to set up the hoses and we'll be ready to go. Now we're going to prepare the hoses. All we need is the hose ends, our hose clamps, and a flathead screwdriver. You're going to put the hose clamps on first, then insert the end and tighten each one down until it's tight. You'll do this on the end of each hose, except for your flush hose, you will only do it on one end, so 5 total. Now your hoses are ready, and we're ready to hook up the entire mixing station. Before assembling the mixing unit, there's one last thing we need to do. We need to graduate the mix tank so we know how much fluid is in it. When mixing VectoBac WDG, it is important to take into consideration displacement when mixing the dry powder into the water. So we're going to use a calibrated flow meter on the hose to enter water and mark the side of the tank every 5 gallons. Now that we have it graduated and marked on the side, we're ready to assemble the mixing station. Now that we have everything ready, we can assemble the mixing station. Here's where you'll need your extensions. You'll take your first one and put it in the bottom bulkhead, where you will add your non-collapsible hose. And this will be the outflow from the tank to the water pump. And this will be into the water pump. Your next hose will be on the back, where you go ahead and screw the other extension in on this end. And now add the hose to this side. And the other end will go onto the outflow of the water pump on this end. And our last hose is going to go on this other end of here, and this will be used to fill the spray tank when we're ready to empty the mixing station. All right, and that's it. Now that we're all put together, let's put some water in it and see how it works. Now that we have everything assembled and we've added some water, let's fire up the water pump and see how it works. And that's how you build a custom mixing station. Remember, you can build your station as large as you'd like. Here's my contact information if you have further questions about how to build your own tank or how to mix VectoBac WDG for WALS applications.